Umi-san Productions.
Prepare to be taken.
Join us on the podcast that delves deep into the shadows of the unknown. We explore the enigmatic and often spine-tingling world of the supernatural, where everyday people share their personal encounters with the unexplained. From chilling ghostly apparitions to elusive cryptids, from UFO sightings and encounters with extraterrestrial beings to the age-old battle between angels and demons, and even the darkest tales of the macabre, we've got it all. Each episode will bring you real stories, unfiltered and uncensored, as we explore the uncharted territories of your deepest fears and curiosities. So, buckle up, listeners, because this podcast will push the boundaries of reality as we know it. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew. Your journey into the unknown begins now. Welcome to my Paranormality. The Rake.
3 years ago, I had just returned from a trip to Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids right to bed and called it a night. At about 4 a.m., I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used the moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he got out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet up from the edge of the bed so quickly his knee almost knocked me out of the bed on the other side. He then grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for a half second, I was able to see what caused the strange reaction. At the foot of the bed, sitting and facing away from us, there was what appeared to be a naked man, or a large hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned as to its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help this thing. My husband was peering over his arm and knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to look at the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed and then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion right along the bed until it was less than a foot from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds, just looking at my husband. The creature then placed its hand on my husband's knee and ran into the hallway, heading towards the kids' rooms. I screamed and ran for the light switch, planning to stop it before my children were hurt by whatever this was. When I got to the hallway, the light from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunched over about 20 feet away. This monstrosity turned around and looked directly at me, covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter Clara standing there, frozen. The creature then ran down the stairs while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured and spoke one last time before we had to take immediate measures and get her help. The last thing she said was, "It is the Rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night, while rushing our daughter to the hospital. Unfortunately, he and my daughter did not survive. Being from a small town, news got around quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located this man in the next town over who had an extremely similar story. We got in contact and began talking about and comparing our experiences. He knew of 2 other people in New York who had seen the creature we now refer to as the Rake. It took the 4 of us about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believe to be accounts of the Rake. None of them gave any details, history, or follow-up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages and never mentioned it again. We found a ship's log explained an encounter with this being, saying only that they were told to leave by the Rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature's visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to by the creature, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the Rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running all night, every night, for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around in my bed each day, once I woke up the next day. By the end of the 2nd week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleep while blurring through the recording at 8 times the normal speed. This attempt to get answers still took almost an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I heard was a shrill voice. It for sure was the Rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe what it said. I haven't let anyone else listen to it. All I know is that I've heard it before, and I now believe that it spoke when it was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason, the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's head as she met her eventual fate make me very upset. I have not seen the Rake since he ruined my life, but I know that he has been in my room while I slept. I know and fear that one night I'll wake up to see the monster staring at me, and then it'll speak.
Black-eyed kid.
I was originally born in the UK, so please pardon my accent. During the winter holiday season of 2021 here in New Mexico, my partner and her son left the country to visit her father, so I was home alone with the cat and the dog. The entire day of the event was filled with strange occurrences. One example being, I walked past the front door on my way to the washroom. I look at the door as I walk by, and it just opens by itself. So I closed the door, thinking to myself how strange the timing was. I make sure it's securely closed by trying to open it without using the handle. It doesn't budge or open. Satisfied, I headed to the washroom and did my thing. Walking back from the washroom to the rest of the house, I passed the front door, and now it's open again. The freaking door has opened itself, and this time the dog is barking at it. I tell our dog to relax, and usually he would, but not today. He finally relaxed after a few minutes of ear-bleeding barks. Fast forward 2 hours, and it's a nearly identical situation, in that I walk past the door, close it, test it, head to the bedroom, come back to the main part of the house, only to see it has opened again. The dog starts barking again. Wash, rinse, repeat. Another 2 hours pass, and while I'm in bed, the dog starts in again. I immediately checked the front door, and thankfully this time it was closed. This sequence of events continues to happen every 2 hours until around 4 a.m. At 4 a.m., I'm awoken by the barks from our dog, accompanied by 3 hard knocks at the door. My blood is coursing through my veins, heart about to beat straight through my chest as I look through the window to the left of the front door to see who was there. And there he was, about a 10-year-old, indigenous-looking boy standing there in a jacket. Wholly unremarkable in appearance until I look for his eyes under his hood and the dark of night. Completely black from eyelid to eyelid. The conversation went roughly like this. With the door still closed and locked, I ask this child, "What's up, little man?" He answers, "I'm so cold. Can I come in?" I then answer, "Where are your parents?" He doesn't answer me back and just stands there silently. He has this eerie fake smile while just kind of nodding his head up and down. He evades the question and again talks about how cold he is. I then ask, "Do you have parents, dude?" It's 4 a.m., so what the hell is going on? "Are you okay? Where are your mom and dad?" He then just shrugs his shoulders. I told him I can't let him in because I had COVID, although I really didn't end up getting it. I still wasn't convinced this wasn't a home invasion type scenario, so I ran to the bedroom, grabbed my cell phone, and dialed 911. I give the dispatcher my name and address while walking back to the front door and start describing the kid. This takes maybe 15 seconds. When I got back to the front door, he was gone. I threw the door open and ran out into the street, but he was gone. There's nowhere he could have gone that quickly. We live at the top of a cul-de-sac. That's basically it. I looked for neighbors with cameras attached to their homes and asked if they had captured anything. Only 2 homes on my street have cameras and neither were able to catch anything. One of the homes with a camera is across the street from us, and while she didn't capture any footage, she said she saw a kid walking in the neighborhood a few days later in the early morning hours as she left for work. But when she got to where she saw him, he was gone, never to be seen again.
Eight-legged freaks!
The Juba Fofi, also known as the Congolese giant spiders, are a type of large arachnid cryptid said to inhabit the forests of the Congo, representing a new species of arachnida. Anecdotal tales describe these cryptids digging a shallow tunnel under tree roots and covering it with a large screen of leaves. Then they create an almost invisible web between their burrow and a nearby tree, stringing the whole area with a network of trip lines. Oblivious animals, which are likely soon to end up on the creature's menu, will trip the line alerting the spider. The victim will trip on one of the strings of the web, alerting the Juba Fofi. This type of predatory behavior is like that of several species of trapdoor spider. According to folklore, the Juba Fofi are giant venomous spiders, which can grow up to the size of a house, and are known for weaving webs around 2 giant trees. The Juba Fofi prey on large animals, such as deer, birds, and would not be above hunting and eating humans. On one occasion, a Juba Fofi dragged off a dog from a Congolese village. Natives claim the eggs of Juba Fofi are a pale yellow-white and shaped like peanuts, and the hatchlings are bright yellow with a purple abdomen. Their coloration becomes darker and brown as they mature. Some of the people indigenous to regions in the Congo where the Juba Fofi has been seen assert that the spider was once quite common, but has since become exceedingly rare. The fullest account by Westerners appears in a cryptozoological book by George Eberhardt. On page 204, Eberhardt relates the terrifying experience of an English couple traveling through a region of jungle in what is now called the Congo. R.K. Lloyd and his wife were motoring in the Belgian Congo in 1938 when they saw a large object crossing the trail in front of them. At first, they thought it was a cat or a monkey, but they soon realized it was a spider with legs nearly 3 feet. Cryptozoologist William J. Gibbons has hunted for what some think may be a living Congolese dinosaur called Mokele Mbembe. On his 3rd expedition in search of the creature, he came upon natives who related their experiences with giant spiders. He shared his experience with readers upon his return to Canada. On this 3rd expedition to equatorial Africa, I took the opportunity to inquire if the Pygmies knew of such a giant spider, and indeed they did. They speak of the Juba Fofi, which is a giant or great spider. They described a spider that is generally brown in color with a purple mark on the abdomen. They grow to quite an enormous size with a leg span of at least 5 feet. The giant arachnids weave together a layer made of leaves similar in shape to a traditional pygmy hut and spin a circular web said to be very strong between 2 trees with a strand stretched across a game trail. These giant ground-dwelling spiders prey on the diminutive forest antelope, birds, and other small game, and are said to be extremely dangerous, not to mention highly venomous, Gibbons states. The spiders are said to lay white, peanut-sized eggs in a cluster, and the pygmies give them a wide berth when encountered, but have killed them in the past. The giant spiders were once very common, but are now a rare sight. In March of 2013, a video surfaced on YouTube of an alleged Juba Fofi caught on a night vision camera near a waterhole next to a tree in Mozambique. The Juba Fofi appears out of the darkness for a moment while scurrying into the darkness on the far right side of the screen. Many of the natives describe the spiders as once being numerous, but now a vanishing species. Encroachment by civilization in the form of rainforests being converted to farming land may have driven the spiders from their natural habitats. Other sightings include: in the year 1890, Uganda, Symes, a missionary, was trekking through the jungle with his companions when the two of his friends became entangled in giant webs over the path. Before Symes could save them, two gigantic arachnids ran out of the jungle and killed his friends. In the year 1938, Congo, the Lloyds were driving through a game trail when they came upon what they believed was a monkey or large cat, but they saw it had 8 legs. Upon which, to their amazement and horror, the spider scuttled off into the bushes. In the year 1942, New Guinea, an Australian soldier said he had encountered a 10-foot web inhabited by a dog-sized spider. It was hairy and looked venomous. In the year 1948, Louisiana, the Sleigh Dons were going to a night church service when halfway down the road they stopped. What came out of the bushes was a horrible, gigantic, tub-sized, black, hairy spider. It disappeared into the bushes. The father, William, acted like he had seen them before, and that it was common. In the year 1970s, Belgian officer Remy Jansen was fleeing from slave gangs in the Yonglus in the Vietnam War when his men were all but slaughtered by hundreds of giant hairy spiders which ambushed him and his men in the jungle interior. Fortunately, Remy and another man managed to survive, but had to abandon the other soldiers to their deaths. In the year 2001, Cameroon, a Baka tribe member told a scientist, William Gibbons, that a Juba Fofi had built its nest near their village. In the year 2010, Dakota Black Hills, a group of people were driving through the hills when a spider about 10 feet across crawled over the road. In the year 2011, Amazon Jungle, Richard Terry, a filmmaker, went to South America to investigate giant spider sightings. He was told by the natives that they did have giant spiders in the forest, but they could not be reached. They were said to be 4 feet wide. In the coming years, cryptid sightings have increased, including giant insect-like cryptids. The Juba Fofi, however, seems to be only spotted in certain regions of Africa, whereas in other regions of the planet, giant spider cryptids are described differently. Have you seen a Juba Fofi or giant spider?
The arresting whistle.
I'm a police officer, also known as a cop, the fuzz, po-po, and unfortunately even known as a pig. My zone partner and I park our patrol vehicles at the bottom of a long dirt road that leads to an abandoned school. We only do this on night shifts when it starts to get slow around 1 a.m. It's a relatively safe place for us to catch up on paperwork or watch some YouTube from our phones. We have had several odd experiences at this place we park at, from strange lights, orbs that maneuver quickly in the woods, to possible UFO sightings. We even found a dead body in this area years ago that still has not been identified. But that's not even the most terrifying. This incident happened around October 2020 at approximately 2 a.m. It was a dead night. Crime was low that time of year, partly because of the COVID virus and partly because it was freezing. We had parked our vehicles side by side, facing opposite directions, so that the driver's side windows lined up to one another, as most law enforcement tend to do this. This is common in our line of work. My partner then gets dispatched to a noise complaint and leaves. Staying put, I use this time to step out to relieve my bladder. As I'm standing outside my patrol vehicle relieving myself, I hear a whistle in the woods that comes from across the abandoned school grounds. These woods are roughly 100 yards from where I am parked. The whistle sounded like a tune, like it came from a human, and it was oddly loud. We do have a homeless problem in my city, but not in the area that I patrol. Needless to say, I assume a homeless person must have wandered their way to the south side of the city. I get back in my car and roll my window up, anxiously awaiting my partner's return. My partner returns after about 20 minutes. I explain to him what just happened, and we move on to other topics. I'm a believer in the paranormal, but he is a complete skeptic. Within about 30 minutes, he decides that he needs to pee. So, he steps out and walks to the rear of his patrol car. He's back there for roughly 5 seconds, and boom, we both hear it. A loud whistle to the tune of a slow song. The whistle lasts for maybe 10 seconds. He walks back to my window, and his face is a pale, milky white. So, as cops do, we decided to investigate. We grab our flashlights and start walking slowly through the field. The grass in this location is up to our waist. We get to about halfway in the field when we hear it again, but this time it sounds like it's coming from our right side, where the school is. As we are standing there with our flashlights shining on the school, we begin to see the grass ahead of us start to move. At this time, there is no wind, and the grass is not moving around where we are standing. It looks like something is crawling in the field. The grass is moving slow in a straight path towards us. We begin walking towards where this movement is coming from, hoping to intersect what might be in this tall grass. At this point, we both have our hands on our firearms ready for anything. The air is eerily still, and you could see our breath through our mouths from the cold. I can tell that my partner is uneasy. We walk very slowly and quietly. As we get about 20 feet away from the moving grass, it stops, and we hear the whistle coming from exactly where our flashlights are shining on the now still grass. We are frozen in fear and too scared to speak to each other. It feels like minutes passed, but it was probably only a few seconds. I take a step forward and suddenly the grass starts to move again, this time away from us, going towards the wood line. Only this time it's fast, too fast for us to run after. So we just stand and watch. We watch as whatever is moving in the grass reaches the woods. We both have our lights focused on that direction, unable to see anything. And again, we hear the whistle, this time coming from the woods where the grass just stopped moving. This is the part that shocks us. We are now shining our lights into the woods, where there are several large trees in our view. This thing stands up. It looked like a child, but not. It's hard to explain. Despite our lights shining directly onto the figure, it seemed amassed in darkness. Before we could even call out, it stepped behind a tree and disappeared. We gathered up the courage to go after it. As we got to the tree where this being was standing moments previously, there was nothing. No being, person, child, footprints, no leaves crunching like you would expect to hear in autumn. It was like it vanished into nothing. We spent the next hour checking reports through our precinct for missing children in the area, and we could find nothing. The creepiest part is that it must have been running on all fours when it was in the grass. We have a children's psychiatric hospital in the city, but they had no reports of escapees. To this day, we cannot explain what transpired that night. And to this day, we continue to park there. 3 years have passed, and we never had another experience like that. But my partner is now a believer of the paranormal, and everyone at the department still thinks we are crazy.
The Trinity beings in Captain Crunch.
Hello everyone, this is the creator of My Paranormality, and I wanted to thank you for tuning into this episode number 4. I secretly put one of my many paranormal experiences in episode 1 named Sunbathing Werewolf, so go and check that one out. Here's another one of my experiences that goes way back. I'm talking back in the late 70s in the borough named the Bronx, New York City. 6 years old was my approximate age, and my brother, 4 years younger than me, my sister, at least 6 years my senior, my mother and stepfather at the time, all lived in an old apartment. The building we lived in was at least 20 stories high, and we lived on no less than the 10th floor. Your basic kitchen, living room, and 2 bedrooms was the layout with cracks in the wall and old white stained trim showing the years of wear and tear throughout the apartment. Central air and heating didn't exist, so every apartment had a radiator with mostly white chipped paint revealing the iron underneath it. If one was financially fit, maybe there would be an air-conditioned unit mounted on one or more windows inside of each dwelling. But we could only afford one unit, and my mother and stepdad had dibs. My siblings and I shared a room, and there were times my younger brother would wind up frequently sleeping in the same room as my mother and stepdad instead of with my sister and me. Because my sister was older, her bedtime was later than ours. Most of the time, my brother and I would be in bed and sleeping by 8 o'clock on school nights, while my sister, on the other hand, would take advantage and stay up later than she was supposed to. She would even take a pillow and blanket to the couch while she was watching television, often falling asleep on the couch. Not aware of the specific year, there were nights that I would wake up just before the sun would rise, but I couldn't move. Paralysis would set in to the point where I couldn't move a single muscle nor make a sound, but was able to open my eyes and look around the room. One specific night, I woke up and couldn't move. In front of me was my baby brother's crib with him inside passed out. Moving my eyes, I could scope out the rest of the room because I slept on my side with my back facing the wall. Every time this happened, I tried to muster as much strength as I could to ultimately move, and after a while, would be successful in fully moving and then go back to sleep with no issues. This night was different than the rest. As I was looking at my brother's crib, immobile, my peripherals revealed some objects on the other side of the room. There was a presence other than my brother and myself. In a corner of the room were 3 beings floating and facing my direction. For some reason, I was only able to clearly see one of the beings, where the other 2 were blurry and opaque. They were in a formation where there was one being in the middle, and the other 2 flanked the main being on each side. They were no taller than 3 feet tall, and the 2 beings that flanked the one in the middle were extremely hard to see. They were out of focus, while this being in the middle just kept my attention the whole experience. Almost as if this situation was meant for me to focus on only one of these subjects. I wonder if I'm dreaming so. I close my eyes and then open them again. Next, I made numerous attempts to move and get out of bed and run to my mother's room or to my sister, who was sleeping in the living room, for protection, but to no avail. Paralysis was my fate. My heart was pounding, and thoughts of being hurt or killed by these invaders consumed my thoughts. But there was also a feeling of calmness, and they made no attempt to come any closer to me. They just hovered in the corner of the room facing me. As stated earlier, the 2 of them were hard to see, almost looking grayish all over from head to toe. However, the being in the middle had a peculiar but recognizable appearance. Being a child, I was into what most kids were into: comic books, toys, cartoons, and into media like action, sci-fi, and various animations. Saturday mornings were special because cartoons were on from 6 a.m. until just before noon. Even the commercials in between shows were awesome, showing toys and animated cereal commercials. My favorite commercials were the Captain Crunch cereal ads, extremely animated and super colorful. The vibrant yellows, blues, and reds put me in a trance, and even going to the supermarket and looking at the cereal box was a treat. The hovering being in the middle looked like Captain Crunch. Yet something was off about the situation that lay before me. Instead of the vibrant colors, the colors were muted, and the figure looked like it was somewhat melted. There were no crisp visuals, and the details looked fake. The blue and yellow colors seemed faded, like a piece of clothing washed many times. It was almost like this being projected this image in my head to block me from seeing what it really looked like. Suddenly, this being in the middle started to move in place, doing loops with its body moving up and down. The other 2 beings stood still, but the middle one really wanted my attention. I just don't know why. 5 minutes is how long this incident lasted, and then nothing. Blackness. I'm then awakened by the sun and go about my day, allowing what transpired to disappear into the recesses of my mind. But it wasn't a solitary incident. This kept happening for about 4 to 5 months, exactly the same, until the whole family moved out of the apartment and relocated. For many years, it was an afterthought, with reminders here and there every time I saw an animated cereal commercial. I would convince myself that those incidents were dreams or that it was imagination going bonkers until around 2001 when I saw a television series by Steven Spielberg called Taken. It was a 10-episode series, but it was the second episode named Jacob and Jesse that caught my attention and put so much into perspective. In one of the first scenes, a mother lovingly puts her son to bed. Moments after the mother leaves the room, an animated, cartoonish squirrel from outside of the bedroom window peers inside the room. The child does not seem too disturbed, almost as if he knows what is about to happen. This squirrel then gestures for the child to follow. Curious, the child does follow, stepping out of the window onto the roof, and while walking up to and looking over the edge, this child jumps down into the arms of this supposed familiar character. The character and the child enter through a door on a tree that looks like a Keebler elf house, and then the tree morphs into a typical saucer-shaped UFO and takes off into oblivion. When I saw this scene play out on my TV, I about dropped to the ground. This was an abduction scenario where an unearthly being projects itself as something a human would be comfortable with to deceive the human to go with it unobstructed. I'm certain that happened to me in the late 70s. These beings knew what I was interested in, and the being in the middle projected itself to look like one of my favorite pop culture characters. The only problem was the being in the middle couldn't perfectly replicate the look and vibrant colors of Captain Crunch. They managed to paralyze me and to hold my attention, but what did these beings want? And the most important question is, did they do anything to me? My life is riddled with crazy, odd, paranormal experiences from past to present, and I'm still trying to find answers. Maybe one day I will.
Thank you for joining us on this spine-tingling journey through the unknown. We hope you've been thoroughly entertained by the chilling tales and unbelievable experiences shared. Our exploration of the supernatural is far from over. We have more experiences, mysteries, and unearthly encounters to uncover in the future. So, be sure to return for more spine-tingling episodes. And for those who want to carry a piece of our paranormal world with them, check out our exclusive merchandise at www.etsy.com/shop/AriseCreation73. That's the number 7 and the number 3. Also, check out more Arise Creations Productions material on other various platforms, including Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcast, BitChute, plus our RSS feed. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, aka X. You can find all the necessary links in the description. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. There are numerous ways to support, which fuels our quest for the unexplained. You can purchase merchandise as stated before, or donate by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Anything helps. Until next time, my paranormal fiends, stay curious and keep your flashlight ready. Once again, this is My Paranormality. We'll be waiting for you on the other side.